Welcome to the Dr. Joe Show. I'm Joe, and today we're here with cigar episode number 22, the highly anticipated, long-awaited, very much requested Cohiba. And I know that I've promised time and time again, Cohiba's coming next, and I got a lot of requests, and I even got one guy who emailed me, and he was actually a little perturbed. He was like, when is Cohiba coming already? You've said it, in this episode you said it, and at the end of this episode you said it, and I still don't see it. Did I miss something? Well, no, you didn't miss anything. I have a very good explanation for why it took so long, and I have been working on it for a while, doing my homework and my research, so to speak. Reason number one, I don't want to disappoint. Cohiba is a big brand, global brand, flagship brand of Habanos S.A. And it's one of those cigars that everybody knows from day one cigar smoker. Even if you don't smoke cigars, there's a high probability that you know Cohiba. And reason number two is that, Cohiba is one of those cigars, it's one of those stories, cigar stories, that reminds me time and time again why I'm so interested in the world of cigars, and just how much intrigue there can be in the world of cigars. It goes so much further than just binder, filler, wrapper, like this, try that, rate this. There's so much more to it than that. And, Cohiba, it's one of those stories that every seasoned, even if you're not that, every Cuban cigar smoker who's been around for a few years knows the story of Cohiba, or at least thinks they know the story. Because let me assure you, that it's one of those stories that once you start putting all the facts together and looking at all the different points of view and all the statements from all the players that were involved, including Castro himself, it just doesn't add up. It's one of those stories that at the end there's a bigger question mark than there was at the beginning. And it's one of those stories that for me, every time I see that black and yellow band, it just reminds me that you don't know shit. You just don't know shit. You don't know what you think you know, and it's quite possible that you know a lot less than what you do know. So, without any further crap, I'm going to get right into it. We're going to light up because we have a long journey ahead of us. I will try to make it, brief and go through it, and it's not going to be hours and hours and hours. It's probably not going to be as long as the Fuente episode, but I can't promise. I really don't know what we're going to get into. There will be no viewer emails. There will be no comments on this and that. We're just going to do the straight story of Cohiba. And while we do, we are going to rate the Cohiba Robusto. Personally, a favorite size. And there is no box date on this baby. It's a beautiful looking cigar. Beautiful aroma. And this actually, I snatched it from the Pacific cigar anniversary jar that I acquired a few weeks ago. You saw the episode on that. If not, you can check it out in the cigar collectibles section. But basically, there are 4 of these Cohiba Robustos in there, and there is no box date. There are cigars in there from 2007, the Por Larrañagas. There are cigars in there from 2011. There's a whole mishmash of different dates in that jar. So you really don't know what date is on this Cohiba Robusto, which is kind of a cool thing, I think, because we're not rating it as a specific box date. We're kind of doing it, if you want to say, a blind date, So therefore, we're rating the cigar in general, Cohiba Robusto in general. We're going to get right into that, cut it up, light it up, and start our journey into the wonderful, mysterious, intriguing world of Cohiba. Alright, so match, box, cutter. Now, I hate doing this, but there's just too much here for me to have memorized everything I want to say. I have the overall concept and all that, of course, can have a very, very long, enlightened conversation about it with anyone. But there are some things in here I really want to say word for word. A lot of it is my own writing, Some of it was taken from various sources all over the internet and off the internet. But wow, a lot of fruity notes on that first pre-draw right there. Just kind of like sweet, perfumey type notes, with a very, very deep, nutty undertone, very earthy undertone. A lot of cedar. You know, I'm getting these. Delicious. Like a nice, wouldn't say mild to medium level of salt, you know? A lot of nuttiness. Some like, I said fruity, kind of like that raisiny type hint you get from certain blends, but different. It's got a very, very musky type of pre-draw flavor. Nice. We're going to light that up. But I interrupted myself. And basically what I'm doing is apologizing for having my head down in the notes a lot of the time. There's no other way I can do it. I don't have $1 million. I don't have a screen I can look at and read. It's not that professional. You know, but I'll try to do my best and pick my head up now and again when I make certain points. But that's the thing. There are a lot of points I want to make here. I also want to state this. A lot of this stuff is fact, and a lot of it comes from my ideas based on these facts. A lot of this stuff you won't find anywhere on the web. It's not proven. And a lot of even the things that are supposed to be facts that come out of some of who I call the key players' mouths haven't been proven to be facts because there are so many different sides to it. Anyway, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about once we get started. Very nice Cuban tobacco flavor there. I wouldn't say it definitely wasn't an intense pre-draw. It wasn't like some, you know, you put it in your mouth and you're like, wow, wow. But it had some very, very good flavor. Very, you know, you could tell it's a high quality smoke. Very low, bassy, earthy notes. Some salt, a tiny bit of twang. Bits of prickly spice picking up around the tongue. Interesting. Interesting. It feels like there's a lot going on, but everything is very subtle right now. It has a very clean, refined flavor to it. It really does. It really does. You know, it's not like... It's very different, even though they call, you know, a lot of people say Cohibas are very strong. They're not. They're really not. Cohiba, the standard line is pretty much medium to full. The Siglo series is even less strong than that and is medium bodied. Cohibas aren't like super, super full bodied cigars. Bolivars are stronger than Cohibas. And it definitely has a good amount of flavor. But so far, it's not, you know, It's nice, very nutty, very, very earthy. Has some coffee-esque type notes picking up a little bit. Some spice. Some, you know, it's like it's got a little bit of all this stuff, but everything's refined. It's not like, you know, it's nice. It's nice. It's very nice. Flavors are starting to pick up. It's very deep, very earthy. It's got a very musky type flavor. There are some bean notes, a lot of bean notes, nuttiness, some coffee-esque type notes. Low to medium level of salt, and a mild dash of spice that's just kind of tingling. It's very nice. Like I said, very, very refined. It's a very refined flavor. Very clean. You know, as soon as you blow the smoke out, it doesn't leave much lingering on the palate. Very clean finish. Smooth as butter through the nose. The retrohale is extremely smooth. In fact, it's very pleasant. And there are a lot of floral, type notes. Very nice. We'll see what we come back to at the end of the first third. But the cigar's got me thinking already, and I'm feeling it already. You know, very, very nice. Definitely a good Cuban cigar. I do detect a tiny, tiny bit of this young type, you know, I don't want to call it it's really not like ammonia. It's like it's a bit of a grassy type, and it's especially detectable through the nose. So that's something I attribute to younger cigars. This might be a bit of a younger cigar in that case, but it still has some very, very good flavors going on. Very nice, tight ash forming. Good roll. Nice draw. A little bit tighter than I'd like it. You know, construction is good. The wrapper's very, very nice looking wrapper. Very clean roll, very clean smoke. It's opening up. As soon as I say it, it's like the cigar says, okay. As soon as I say that, I take a pull and it just like opened up. I didn't even need to pull twice. Very interesting. Let me let that sit for a second, cool off. I'm puffing it to death. Very nice. Very nice. I wasn't overly impressed on the first light. You might have even sensed that in me. I was kind of like, but I keep coming back, like, it's drawing me in. Let's put it that way. Anyway. All right. So Cohiba was first blended in 1966 at a top secret location by the order of Fidel Castro. Now we have to ask, there were plenty of great cigars in Cuba at the time. What happened that caused Fidel to need a brand new cigar blended for him? Well, this is that story. It was during the mid-1960s. One of Castro's bodyguards, and this is a very familiar story that you'll find just about everywhere, including Wikipedia. One of Castro's bodyguards happened to share a few cigars with him. These cigars were made for the bodyguard personally by a local artisan and friend. Castro found them to be among the best cigars he'd ever smoked. The following quote is from Castro himself and comes from the summer 1994 issue of Cigar Aficionado, Volume 2, Number 4, in an article by Marvin R. Shankin titled A Conversation with Fidel. I used to see the man smoking a very aromatic, very nice cigar, and I asked him what brand he was smoking. He told me that it was a special blend that came from a friend who makes cigars, and he gave me a few, and he gave them to him. I said, let's find this man. I tried the cigar and found it so good that we got in touch with him and asked him how he made it. Then we set up the house, El Laguido, and he explained the blend of tobacco he used. He told which leaves he used from which tobacco plantations. He also told us about the wrappers he used and other things. We found a group of cigar makers. We gave them the material, and that is how the factory was founded. Now Cohiba is known all over the world, and that is Fidel Castro speaking from that article. But the question is, who was this man? If you read the article in its entirety, and things start to get interesting already, if you read the article in its entirety, Fidel seems very careful in this entire conversation with Fidel not to mention this guy's name. So who was this man, and what was this top secret location? He does mention El Laguido, but we'll see that later. The man, the local artisan, the friend of the bodyguard, the guy who came up with this blend for Cohiba, was Eduardo Rivera. So many of you are going right now like, wait, but I thought, we'll get to that. So Rivera gives cigars to his friend, the bodyguard, who gives cigars to Fidel, who likes it so much that he wants to meet the friend. Rivera had first started as a roller at the Por Larrañaga factory in 1957, but at the time Fidel tried the cigars from the bodyguard who were given to him by Rivera, Rivera was working at the now defunct La Corona factory in downtown Havana. He acquired his tobacco there to make a few cigars a day for himself based on his own personal blend. And he rolled them in the Lancero format, which was also very important because the cigar's elegant shape was one of the first things that caught Fidel's eye. He mentions that a lot. And that shape, after this whole thing happened, became almost synonymous with Cuban revolutionaries. You'd always see pictures of them with these long, slender cigars hanging out of their mouths. Well, those were those cigars. So, little did Rivera know that this blend would become the basis for the world-famous Cohiba and then Davidoff. After Castro and Rivera met, Rivera started rolling cigars for Fidel. And Rivera quotes during an interview with Cigar Aficionado later on, "After I started making cigars for Fidel, I rolled them in my house and for a while at La Corona, only for Fidel. From that time on, Fidel smoked nothing else and I made cigars for him." That was pretty much that quote. But the interesting thing about that quote right there, once they start talking to Rivera, the old story of, things starts breaking down. First of all, we're talking to this guy Rivera, and everybody else thinks we should be talking about somebody else. We're going to mention him later. But the other thing is, like, this guy at first started rolling cigars in his house, and then at La Corona for Fidel. It didn't happen all right away where this guy was like the only guy allowed to touch his tobacco, and we'll get into all that. Soon after, Rivera was given authority as the only man allowed to roll cigars for Castro. These cigars soon became a much prized and highly coveted diplomatic gift, with Castro being the only one with the authority to give the cigars away. It was soon realized that the cigar needed a name. Rivera recalls working closely with one of Castro's secretaries, Celia Sanchez. "We decided on Cohiba," he recalls. "Our native people called the tobacco plant Cohiba." The native people were the Taínos, by the way. It was also a word used to describe something done with a lot of care. So, first produced in 1966, Cohiba was formally added to Cuba Tobacco's brand registry in 1968. Formally. Meaning it still wasn't available to the public, but it was registered as an official brand. Soon production was moved to a top secret location, now the world famous El Laguido factory. This factory was a mansion on the outskirts of Havana, converted into a rolling school for women in 1961. So it was a perfect front. It was a mansion. It didn't look anything like a factory. And for a long time people knew it to be nothing more than a rolling school. But that was its front, and Rivera recalls having about 20 rollers, soon producing 650,000 cigars a year. he realized at that point that there was more than enough cigars to commercialize something. I mean, these cigars are for Fidel and gifts to diplomats. Now you're rolling 650,000 a year. Yeah, you can make a production brand out of it. But Cohiba would not be the brand to go public at that time. It would still be reserved for diplomatic officials and Castro himself. Instead, in 1969, they contacted someone and asked to discuss a project. That someone was Zino Davidoff. So that's a good place to take a small break. Let's see how our cigar is doing. Wow. Well, first of all, one of the few Cuban cigars that hasn't just gone out on me when I'm off talking my ass off. You know, that's one thing I was afraid of with this episode. My cigar's going to keep going out. But it has not. Wow. Very, very deep, earthy flavor. A lot of bean, it's like bean type flavor. You know, salt, a little bit of spice. No big change-ups yet. Some coffee-esque notes are getting a little stronger. And the strength of the cigar is great. I feel it. You know, I'm getting a little heady from it. More so than I feel I would usually from a cigar this smooth. It's incredibly smooth for a cigar that has this kind of strength. Very, very smooth. The aroma is really starting to come together too. Very, very, very nice. Very nice. Say goodnight, Max.